Welcome to Expectations Gap, where we'll cut through the hype to reveal how AI really impacts our lives, its promises, its pitfalls, and unexpected truths in between. I'm Omneya Hamza, and today we're tackling a crucial issue in AI, bias. Artificial intelligence is already shaping the way we hire employees, diagnose illnesses, approve loans, and even create media. But here's the challenge. If AI is trained on biased data, it can amplify discrimination rather than eliminate it. And the numbers prove it. According to 2024 survey conducted by IMD, Microsoft, and Equal Voice, 72% of executives are concerned about bias in AI. Only 5% feel highly competent in spotting bias in AI development. 71% believe their organization is not doing enough to mitigate bias. That means most businesses are aware of the issue, yet very few have a strategy to fix it. So, in today's episode, we'll explore what AI bias is and how it manifests, why it's a major risk for businesses and society, and how we can fix it with ethical AI practices. So, let's get started. According to the IMD white paper, Mind the Gap, that I've added the link of the paper to the description of this episode, AI bias refers to systematic and non-random errors in machine learning models that result in unfair outcomes, privileging certain groups while disadvantaging others. And generally, bias is rooted in the real-world patterns of inequality and discrimination, and it is just mirrored in Gen AI training data. Real-world bias is fed into Gen AI systems and returned into the real world when AI systems create new outputs based on bias. Then again, from the real world, they're retraining training data and the process renews. The risk of bias is that it becomes amplified by Gen AI and will perpetuate these stereotypes at scale, widening existing gaps in fairness, representation, and equality. This bias is usually introduced through training data bias, where AI models learn from historical data that may already contain racial, gender, or cultural bias. Also, algorithmic bias, the way AI is structured and optimized, may unintentionally favor certain demographics. And deployment bias. Even if AI outputs are neutral, human interpretation or decision-making can skew results. Now, let's look at some real-world examples of how AI bias manifests. A well-known case happened at Amazon, where an AI recruitment tool penalized resumes that included the word women, such as women's soccer team, because it was trained on historical hiring patterns that favored male candidates. And another example was mentioned in a study by the National Institute of Standards and Technology in 2019, where they found that some facial recognition algorithms were 100 times more likely to misidentify Black and Asian individuals compared to white individuals. And in healthcare, a study that was published in Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences found that Black patients were systematically under-prescribed pain medication compared to the white patients with similar conditions. AI-driven healthcare tools trained on this biased data replicated and reinforced the disparity. So, the problem is clear. AI bias is not just theoretical. And AI bias is not just an ethical dilemma. Not that I'm trying to undermine the ethical dilemma that we're in any way, but AI bias has a business risk and a greater risk on society. Ranked first, the reputation and public trust risk, where the survey insights reflected that brand reputation was ranked as the biggest risk of AI bias by executives. And another interesting number by Edelman Trust Barometer, where 69% of consumers expect CEOs to be transparent about ethical AI use. So you can think, if a company is caught using biased AI, the backlash can be immediate and damaging. And ranked second comes the customer and employee discrimination risk, where an AI-driven lending system was found to deny Black applicants mortgages at a higher rate than white applicants, where 27% of mortgage applications by Black applicants were denied compared to only 13.6% for white applicants. And that was from the Urban Institute in 2020. Then comes the poor decision-making risk, where there is a risk of misdiagnosis and unequal access to treatment for patients in the healthcare sector, and an unfair credit scoring and loan denials within the financial institutions, or maybe wrongful arrests for law enforcement measures, and maybe disparities in education outcomes and biased assessments, or unfair targeting or exclusion of specific groups while marketing a certain product or service. And then discrimination in hiring and promotion processes that occurs by HR sometimes. And the fourth risk is the legal and compliance challenges, where, as you know, that governments are introducing AI fairness laws like the EU AI Act and US AI ethics guidelines, which will penalize the companies that deploy biased AI systems. And the survey insights shows that only 9% of executives believe their organization's AI policies actively mitigate bias. And a very interesting number as well, that 19% or more of the executives are still unaware of key strategies to mitigate bias in AI. The message is clear. Unchecked AI bias can cause real harm. So how do we fix it? The IMD white paper suggests a 3-part strategy. Step 1, process. We're rolling out effective frameworks for governance, checks, and metrics, and compliance begins with responsible AI principles aligned with organizational values and should leverage diverse organizational capabilities and knowledge. To establish AI ethics boards to set guidelines and conduct regular AI audits to detect and remove bias. It's also interesting to know from the survey that only 6% of organizations actively audit AI results for bias. Step 2, people, where diversity, equity, and inclusion builds increasing traction in organizations and develops robust, evidence-based frameworks, guidelines, and key priorities to safeguard inclusion and representation. AI developers need bias awareness trainings, and AI development teams must be diverse to prevent blind spots. Step 3, technology, where responsible AI considerations should guide all the 3 phases of Gen AI. From representative training datasets to algorithm development and performance analytics, questions should be integrated through a diversity, equity, and inclusion lens. And it's also interesting to know that executives who received AI bias training were 21% more likely to feel confident in identifying bias. And by the way, Microsoft shared their responsible AI approach in the paper if you would like to go through the details. AI is shaping our future, but if left unchecked, it could scale discrimination rather than eliminate it. So, what actions you can do? You can educate yourself on AI fairness, you can hold companies accountable for ethical AI, and you can advocate for transparency in AI policies. Thanks for tuning in to Expectations Gap. Don't forget to subscribe and write your thoughts. It helps us keep these important conversations going. And until next time, let's shape the future of AI together.